The mess hall at Naval Training Center. Greywater throbbed with noon noise, metal trays, quick chatter, the soft electric hum. 3 first-phase recruits tried to disappear into their seats. 5 bigger shadows didn't let them. Holt, Briggs, Carter, Knox, and Ryder fanned out like they owned the aisle. On your knees. Asked to finish lunch. Laughter rippled, mean and easy. Then it faltered. Lieutenant Ava Rios stood. 5'4", neat knot of hair, calm brown eyes. She stepped between the crowd and the boys, as if claiming a small patch of floor no one else wanted. The recruits looked her up and down like a problem already solved. Office work, Briggs sneered. Paper pusher. Ava's mouth barely moved. Is that what strength looks like to you? The room tightened. Forks hovered. A tray rattled somewhere far away. Holt rolled his shoulders, amused and bored. Ryder lifted his phone just enough to catch the show. Knox studied her stance and frowned. 5 recruits surrounded her at the center aisle. 40 seconds later, the mess hall would be silent for a very different reason. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories so you never miss these true tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Lieutenant Ava Rios had been at Naval Training Center Greywater for just 3 days, officially observing discipline and morale. Her clipboard and calm presence made her invisible in plain sight, exactly what she wanted. She moved through the facility quietly, noting every pattern, which recruits shifted tables to avoid others, who laughed at insults, who filmed them, and which instructors pretended not to see. The reports of hazing weren't exaggerated. Something inside this space had rotted small acts of cruelty masquerading as toughness. Ava's own background should have made her an ideal fit for this place. 4th-generation military, daughter of a Marine, sister of an Air Force pilot. Her idea of discipline came from protection, not humiliation. She believed toughness meant keeping others safe, not breaking them apart for sport. Still, most around her never saw past appearances. At 5'4", with a soft voice and plain uniform, she was the kind of officer recruits felt safe mocking. They mistook restraint for weakness. They didn't notice the quiet, deliberate way she walked, how she scanned exits, measured space, and logged every small shift in tone. Every day she watched 5 names repeat in her notes: Holt, Briggs, Carter, Knox, Ryder. Holt, the loud leader, turned bravado into law. Briggs's smirk filled any silence. Carter used muscle where words failed. Knox, the sharp one, calculated how far they could push without crossing an official line. And Ryder, the joker, filmed every humiliation, posting clips under anonymous tags. Together, they built a small kingdom of fear inside a place meant to build honor. Ava had seen their type in every corner of the military world. Strong bodies, weaker hearts. They believed fear was discipline, confusion was leadership. But even they didn't know what true strength looked like. On her 3rd morning, Ava stood near the drill field, watching sunlight burn across the concrete. 2 recruits ran laps under Holt's jeering commentary. He shouted, "Motivation," but every line dripped with cruelty. When one tripped, Briggs laughed loud enough for the entire field to turn. The instructors looked away. Ava wrote a note in tidy block letters, Holt's group controlling morale through intimidation, recommending observation at noon meal. By lunchtime, she'd decided to confirm what she already suspected. She'd sit where they usually tested others, center aisle, near the vending machines, no allies nearby. If they were bold enough to turn that mockery toward her, she'd finally have a complete picture of what this base had become. She wasn't planning to intervene physically. Not yet. She simply wanted to understand the culture that let bullies bloom under fluorescent light. But deep down, she knew this wouldn't stay on paper. There was something in her gut, the same feeling she'd had on deployments overseas the second before chaos hit, that told her the observation phase was about to end. She looked around the room as the recruits filed in. Holt's group swaggered like the mess hall belonged to them. A smaller recruit at their table looked ready to vanish into his tray. Ava's inner line whispered through her head, quiet but absolute. Strength is what you do for the smallest person in the room. Had you ever seen someone bullied while others looked away? What would you have done? The clatter of trays and voices filled the mess hall until the noise blurred into one steady pulse. 100 recruits and a few instructors tried to finish lunch before afternoon drills. At the far end, Holt's group came in late, swaggering, loud, and looking for an audience. Holt was built for the spotlight, tall, broad, every motion meant to be seen. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he stopped behind a smaller recruit, a nervous kid named Pierce who was sitting ramrod straight, eyes fixed on his tray. "Posture check," Holt barked. His tone mimicked the instructor's, but it dripped with mock authority. If that spine were any softer, you'd slide out of your own uniform. The recruits around the table laughed on cue. It was the first laugh of the sequence, the one that tells everyone else what kind of show this will be. Pierce didn't move. His shoulders stiffened, jaw clenched. Holt circled once, pleased by the reaction. Briggs leaned close enough that Pierce could feel his breath. "If you want respect," he said, low and oily, "earn it on your knees." The laughter this time was thinner. A few recruits exchanged glances. Ryder, the joker of the group, held his phone at chest level, pretending to check messages while his camera recorded. He whispered, "Simon, man, give the viewer something to watch." Carter, impatient, accidentally bumped the table. A tray flew sideways, rice and peas scattering. "Oops," he said, grinning, testing reflexes. Knox, who liked to play the philosopher, folded his arms. "Team standards," he said. "We help the weak toughen up. Better they learn now than wash out later." A few chuckles lingered, but the mood had changed. The entertainment had teeth now. The nearest tables fell silent, pretending to eat but not chewing. You could feel the air shift from curiosity to discomfort, then to the heavy quiet that comes when people know something's wrong and don't want to see it. Lieutenant Ava Rios stood. No sound from her chair, no rush. She walked forward through the maze of tables, a small figure moving through a large noise. When she spoke, her voice carried just enough to reach them. "Gentlemen," she said evenly, "what exactly did they violate?" "Which regulation number?" It wasn't shouted, it was surgical. The words cut through the air and left silence behind them. Holt turned first. "Ma'am, this is internal." "We're reinforcing standards." "Internal," she repeated. "Meaning outside the chain of command?" Briggs laughed nervously. "You wouldn't understand, ma'am. This is how we build toughness." Ava's tone stayed level. "You're saying toughness comes from public humiliation?" "Comes from proving yourself," Carter said. "Weak ones slow us down." She nodded as if agreeing. "So you test others without authority, outside supervision, in a public place. That's your model of leadership?" The five exchanged glances. Her words sounded like questions, but every one of them landed like a report already written. "Lady," Holt said finally, stepping closer, "this isn't your lane." Ava didn't step back. "My lane," she said, "is discipline. You're in it now." The nearest recruits froze. Even the air-conditioning hum seemed to soften. Briggs crossed his arms. "Respect has to be earned. You, of all people, should know that." Ava tilted her head. "Define it for me." "What?" "Respect. Define it." "Size? Volume?" "How hard you hit." Ryder gave a nervous laugh, trying to break the tension. "You're going to write us up for eating too loud?" Ava looked at him, then at the phone half hidden behind his tray. "Put that away. You're recording an unauthorized confrontation." The phone disappeared. Carter took a half step forward, testing distance. "You think you scare us, ma'am?" "No," she said quietly. "I think you scare yourselves." That made Holt bristle. "You have no idea who you're talking to." "Then tell me," she said. "Who am I talking to? Because right now, I see 5 recruits confusing intimidation with leadership." Her calm was unnerving. The 5 men so comfortable being loud looked smaller under her composure. Knox tried to recover. "Look, ma'am, this isn't about disrespect. We're just keeping people accountable." "Accountable to what?" Ava asked. "You said you're helping the weak toughen up. What did Pierce do wrong? He sat in the center, Holt said. Didn't earn that seat. The center of the room, Ava repeated. That's your battlefield? Briggs snorted. Some of us believe in standards. And some of us enforce rules, she said, not fantasies. Another ripple of silence rolled outward. Forks paused halfway to mouths. A tray wobbled somewhere down the row, loud as thunder. Holt's tone hardened. You're a guest here, ma'am. Stay in your lane. You said that already, she replied. You still haven't told me what you think strength means. Carter's grin slipped. Strength is taking hits and staying standing. Not backing down, Ryder added, eager for backup. Dominating, Briggs said. Owning the room. Consistency, Knox muttered. Ava nodded slowly. And you prove that by cornering 3 recruits half your size during lunch? Briggs leaned closer. You got a problem with that? She looked up at him. Yes, you mistake cruelty for courage. The words hit harder than a shout. Even Holt's smirk faltered. He stepped closer again, voice low. You don't get it, lady. The real world doesn't care about your feelings. You think you're teaching us something? Ava's eyes didn't waver. I'm giving you a chance to stop before you learn it the wrong way. That single sentence seemed to stall every motion in the room. No one breathed. The background noise thinned to the scrape of a spoon on porcelain. Knox looked from her to Holt. We should walk away, he whispered. But Holt, pride blazing, sneered. Or what? Ava's reply was almost gentle. Or you'll redefine strength the hard way. That made Carter laugh again, sharp and brittle. You threatening us, ma'am? I'm warning you, she said. For your sake, not mine. Her voice was calm enough to sound like mercy. The crowd's mood shifted again, from fear to the kind of suspense that makes people hold still, afraid to miss the next line. Someone at the back whispered, she's not backing up. They all felt it, the way she stood, not tense, not braced, just ready. Like gravity had picked a side, and it wasn't theirs. If you were in that mess hall, would you step forward, or wait for someone else to move first? Steam breathed across the serving line and turned the air into a wavering veil. It curled between bodies, softened edges, and turned faces into brief ghosts. Through that shimmer, Lieutenant Ava Rios stood with her hands loose at her sides, weight quiet over her feet. Carter decided to test the boundary, the way men do when they want to prove the world bends for them. He came close, chest first, just enough pressure to claim the square of tile in front of her. Ava didn't retreat. She didn't square up like a movie fighter either. She made a correction so small it looked like nothing. 1 foot slid the width of a coin, heel settling, knee soft, hips stacking over arches. Her shoulders dropped a breath. It was the kind of stance you learn in rooms that punish bad balance. 2 cooks behind the line saw it. Not the kids. The prior service ones with salt and pepper hair and forearms mapped with old burns. They didn't say a word, but their faces changed, like someone had suddenly translated a language they hadn't heard spoken correctly in years. Carter blinked. He felt something in the air that hadn't been there a second ago, and couldn't have named it if you held a regulation to his throat. Ryder's phone drifted up again, as if a magnet under the floor were pulling the lens toward her posture. His thumb hesitated. The smirk he wore for the camera didn't fit right anymore. Ava's eyes were on Holt, even while Carter breathed heat an inch from her shoulder. We're still missing the citation, she said, tone easy. What rule authorizes pure punishment during a meal period? Knox answered before he realized he was answering. Good order and discipline. Article 92? Ava asked mildly. Failure to obey a lawful order or regulation. Which lawful order are you enforcing? Exactly. Written, posted, acknowledged. The words were quiet. They were also exact. Knox's mouth closed on the second syllable of whatever he had been about to say. His eyes cut to her collar, then away, then back. Bars. He'd seen bars before. Bars didn't talk like that. Steam hissed again. The nearer warmer fogged and then cleared. As it lifted, a thin line pale almond length glinted near Ava's hairline above her right temple. Not a dramatic scar, Not a story you could sell to strangers at a bar, just the kind of neat, healed mark that comes from sharp edges and tight places. It sat where a helmet rim might hide it most days. Holt didn't see it. The petty officer in the galley did. He'd been in long enough to know the look of a repaired mistake, the kind you don't make twice. His eyes sharpened. He didn't salute. He didn't nod. He just stopped wiping the counter for one extra heartbeat and then started again, slower. "Ma'am," Briggs said, filling the silence with bravado, "we're teaching the essentials. Bearing. Presence. If they can't take pressure, they don't belong." Ava's answer was heatless. "Then teach. Use your own example. Speak with respect. Define standards in writing. Document corrective action. Elevate concerns up the chain." Ryder's eyebrows jumped. No stutter, no reaching for terms. She was pulling precise phrases, like tools out of a roll: use of force ladder, minimum necessary, witness statements, protected reporting. She didn't over-explain. She didn't flex vocabulary to win. She just selected the right words, as if they were the only words available. Knox heard it the way a musician hears a trained ear. Not the gloss, the cadence. She wasn't guessing. She was recalling. Carter bumped again, a touch sharper this time, as if repetition could turn doubt into proof. The air shifted. Ava rebalanced, tiny, elegant, unhurried. The motion lived in ankles and hips, not in fists. When she settled, the weight in the aisle changed sides like a tide turning under the surface. From the doorway, a breeze rolled through, lifting napkins and carrying the faint smell of detergent. A challenge coin edge flashed as Ava tucked a small notebook into her blouse pocket, just a sliver of metal catching light, no more. The engraving was too brief to read, the curve too quick to fix, but the shape of it, trident-like, made the petty officer's hand pause over a ladle. He didn't see it long enough to swear to anything. He saw it long enough to feel a memory rise in his throat, warm and hard. He glanced down the line. Another cook, the one with a faded anchor tattoo, was already looking at him with a question he didn't ask out loud. Ava directed her next sentence to Knox, as if he were the only one in the room qualified to understand. "If you believed in accountability, you'd collect statements after you escalated, not videos before." Knox felt the floor tip under his assumptions. He wasn't frightened yet. He was unsettled, which is what happens in the second before fear when your brain still hopes it's a misunderstanding. Holt mistook the silence for ground regained. "Enough," he said, stepping closer, voice pitched for theater. "Quit hiding behind policy. This is simple. You don't belong in this conversation. Everything you've done in the last 2 minutes belongs in my report," Ava said. Report, not threat. Not warning. A fact with a destination. Ryder's camera dropped another inch. "Ma'am," Briggs pushed, "what would you know about toughness? You ever had to prove yourself without a safety net?" Ava scanned the 3 recruits behind her, hands at their sides now, eyes on her shoulder, breathing steadier because she told them to breathe steadier. She looked back at Briggs. "Every day," she said, "without recording it." Carter's jaw worked. He rolled his shoulder as if it hurt. Maybe it did. He hadn't collided with anything but air, and still something in him recognized contact had not gone the way contact usually went. The petty officer ladled gravy and missed the plate by a 1/4 inch, then fixed it with a gentle gesture that smoothed the mistake into nothing. He kept his head down and listened. "Article 93, Ava said almost conversationally. "Cruelty and maltreatment." "You're not there yet. You know why?" Briggs barked a laugh. "Because we're nice? Because I'm standing here," she said, "and because I'm giving you language that lets you stop." The cooks looked at each other again. They knew the feel of that kind of mercy, firm, quiet, present before the line is crossed, so no one has to be dragged back afterward. Holt forced a grin. "We don't need your mercy." Ava didn't disagree. She didn't agree. She recentered, a hair. The movement would have been invisible if the floor hadn't been tiled. You could see it in the grout lines. Her toes stayed forward, not flared. Her hands stayed relaxed, palms neither open nor closed. She faced Holt, but kept Carter and Briggs alive at the edges of her gaze, the way people trained to clear rooms keep corners as real as doors. Knox saw the triangulation and, for the first time, felt something cold touch the back of his neck. "Ma'am," he said, softer, "we can table this." Ava looked at him and softened by a degree. "You can," she said. Holt crowd stepped again, trying to fill the vacuum. "What's your job here anyway?" he demanded. Standing in chow lines, quoting textbooks, Ava didn't answer the job question. "What did he do wrong?" she repeated, nodding at Pierce. "List it. 1, 2, 3. Holt opened his mouth and found nothing inside it worth saying out loud. "Center table," Briggs bluffed. "Not a rule," Ava said. "Head low," Carter tried. "Not a violation," she said. "Looked weak," Ryder whispered before he realized he was speaking. Ava turned her head a fraction, enough to let the silence own the space. "That's not a standard," she said. "That's a feeling." Steam ebbed again. The scar near her temple flashed. Gone. The petty officer wiped the same patch of stainless steel 3 times longer than necessary. Ava's restraint held. She didn't mention her branch. She didn't cite her deployments or her training or her rack of ribbons. She didn't flex rank. She never once said, "I outrank you," though the bars on her collar made that point all by themselves for anyone who cared to look. She offered them exits instead of cliffs. She left her hands at rest. Her economy of motion said more than any title could. Every inch she moved was earned and recorded by muscle memory older than most of the room. Knox cleared his throat. "Holt," he said, almost pleading now. Holt heard it as disloyalty. "What's wrong with you?" Knox didn't answer. He watched Ava's eyes, calm, alert, the opposite of bored. He tried to picture those eyes panicked. He couldn't. "Last time," Ava said, addressing all 5. "Pick up your trays." "Sit down. Let them eat." Carter's mouth curled. "Or what? Or you learn that there's a difference between noise and power," she said, "and you learn it in front of witnesses." It wasn't a threat. It was a description of weather rolling in from a horizon you couldn't pretend not to see anymore. Ryder swallowed. The phone in his hand had become heavy. He wasn't sure when that happened. The petty officer finally looked up and met Ava's gaze for 1 second. Whatever he wanted to say, he didn't. He shifted his weight, heels planting like a man ready to support an outcome he could not command. Across the room, utensils quieted. Chairs stopped scraping. Conversation thinned to the tiny clinks of nervous motion people make when they're trying to look unafraid. The scar didn't flash again. The challenge coin didn't reappear. There were no dramatic props. Just stance, language, and the way experienced people recognize gravity when it picks its side. Ava eased her head a fraction to keep Holt and Carter bracketed and spoke to Pierce without turning. "Eyes on me," she said. "Breathe." Pierce did. The color came back to his face. Knox exhaled, long and careful, as if he'd been underwater too long and had to remember how to surface without bursting anything. Holt looked around for the laugh that would restore the theater. None came. When the crowd stops feeding a performance, the stage lights go cold. He felt it and mistook it for betrayal. Ava's voice was the softest it had been all day. "This is your last clean exit," she said. The cooks didn't move. The petty officer's hands stilled over stainless steel, water beating and running in a line. No one in the room knew her history. Enough of them now suspected she had one. What detail would have tipped you off? Stance, language, or that coin glint? The air broke at the sound of metal scraping tile. Holt's tray, shoving back with enough force to make everyone nearby flinch. He'd had enough of quiet questions and calm eyes. "You heard me," he snapped, turning toward Pierce, the smaller recruit still trying to disappear into his seat. "You think hiding behind her saves you? Get up." Pierce didn't move. Ava didn't speak. Holt's hand came up in that lazy, dismissive motion meant to make a point, not quite a swing, not quite harmless. Second 0, circle tightens. Ava stepped, not back, but forward, sliding off the line at 45 degrees. The movement was so clean, it almost didn't register. Holt's wrist met her hand. His weight kept traveling, redirected like water finding a downhill path. Second 7, first redirect. Carter saw Holt stumble and moved automatically, a heavy-shouldered charge that had ended fights in locker rooms his whole life. Ava pivoted her hips, caught the inside of his sleeve, and used his own momentum. No strike, no brute force, just leverage. Carter's boots left the floor for a blink before he landed against the nearest table. Trays rattled, forks jumped. He stayed down, wind knocked out but unhurt. Second 18. Second man neutralized, no strikes. Briggs came next, half faint, half fury. He reached for her arm. She turned his wrist, sleeve dragging across her forearm, and his own body did the rest. He face-planted, arms flailing to catch balance that wasn't there. It looked accidental, almost graceful. Ryder froze mid-filming, the phone halfway up. He forgot to breathe. Knox stayed where he was, instinct telling him this was already over but refusing to believe it. Second 27, Holt charges, she angles out. Holt recovered fast, anger and pride fighting for control. He roared, lunged. Ava turned with him, hands high enough to control his shoulders, stepping behind instead of away. Her left foot found anchor, her right arm wrapped across his forearm. A simple pivot, a shift of leverage, and the choke that should have happened never did. Second 33, choke never happens. He never gets arms on. He stopped struggling because there was nowhere to go. The mess hall had gone absolutely still. Even the ventilation fans sounded quieter. Ava released him the instant he stilled, letting him stumble backward into Knox, who caught him out of reflex. Second 45, stunned. 2 on the floor, 1 sliding chairs, 1 locked in place by fear, the last finally realizing this was out of his league. The clatter faded. All that remained was the sound of Carter's labored breathing and Briggs muttering, "How?" before stopping himself. Ava stood exactly where she'd started, sleeves crisp, hair still neat, pulse even. "No one's hurt," she said calmly, as if reviewing a drill. "You can still end this with dignity." Ryder's phone lowered slowly until it hung useless at his side. He looked at the screen recording light blinking red and turned it off without thinking. Holt, bent over and sweating, couldn't meet her eyes. Carter sat rubbing his ribs, expression sliding between pain and disbelief. Briggs blinked hard, still kneeling, trying to process what physics had just betrayed him. Knox finally spoke, voice quiet. "That wasn't luck." Ava's reply came steady. "No. That was training." Her tone carried nothing triumphant, only the matter-of-fact clarity of someone who had done this before, somewhere worse, for stakes that weren't pride. The petty officers behind the galley line stood motionless, the kind of silence only old service creates when it recognizes something holy in its own language. Pierce looked at her the way a drowning man looks at shore. Ava scanned the room once, making sure every face was up. "We're done here," she said. "Everyone at your seats." Nobody argued. In the stunned pause that followed, the seconds she'd counted replayed in every mind, each one heavier than the last. Be honest, at which second would you have understood she wasn't who they thought? The doorway took a breath, then filled with command presence. Commander Ellison moved in with the quiet speed of someone used to rooms stopping for him. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. 2 recruits were on the floor. 3 were rattled and vertical, and a small lieutenant stood composed with 3 first phasers tucked behind her like a shield made of calm. His eyes went straight to her collar. Silver bars. Knox followed the line of that glance and felt heat drain from his face. LT bars. Clear, visible, undeniable. The chill hit bone. "Report, Lieutenant," Ellison said. Ava Rios didn't shift her feet. She squared her breathing, nothing else. "Recruits initiated harassment of first phase personnel, sir," she said, voice level. They escalated to physical intimidation. Minimal force applied to neutralize imminent contact. No serious injuries observed. Scene contained. Ellison's attention moved. Holt flushed and sweating, Briggs on a knee, blinking at the floor, Carter seated, hand cupped to his ribs, Ryder frozen around a silent phone, Knox standing too still. The commander's jaw ticked once. "Names," he said. Ava delivered each last name, position, and action in clipped, clean phrases. No color. No theater. Facts with timestamps. Witnesses. Galley staff. Tables C through E, aisle 2, she replied. Recording attempted by recruit Ryder. Device active. Ryder swallowed and stared at the black rectangle in his palm as if it were about to testify against him, which it would. "Background for the record," Ellison said. "Temporary assignment to observe discipline and morale following elevated washout rates and hazing complaints," Ava answered. 3-day observation. Pattern identified with these 5 public inspections. Boundary testing just short of explicit rule violation. Intimidation of isolated recruits. Intervention initiated only after escalation. The room absorbed the chain. Complaint. My pattern. My escalation. My intervention. It sounded inevitable when she said it that way. It sounded accountable. Ellison let the silence hold, then addressed the aisle without looking away from the 5. For those who need the reminder, the Uniform Code of Military Justice is not optional. Article 92, failure to obey a lawful order or regulation. Article 93, cruelty and maltreatment. Depending on evidence, we may be discussing assault under Article 128. You do not build toughness with unauthorized corrections in a mess hall. You do not film lessons for entertainment. You do not turn peers into props. Forks stopped halfway to mouths, phones lowered an inch. Steam drifted around stainless steel and went quiet somehow. Minimum necessary force means exactly that, Ellison continued. Escalate only to protect safety. Stop the instant the threat stops. What you witnessed was not bravado, it was restraint. Some of you recognized it. All of you will remember it. He turned back to the lieutenant. Injuries? None apparent beyond transient impact, sir, Ava said. Recommend Corpsman quick check for Briggs and Carter. Good. Ellison's gaze hardened on the 5. You're done here for now. You will be separated, escorted, medically checked, and interviewed. You will surrender any recordings. You will not speak to each other about this incident. You will not approach these recruits again. Holt's mouth opened, then thought better of it. Briggs pushed to his feet, red with confusion. Carter winced, pride louder than pain. Ryder's fingers tightened on the phone, then loosened. Master at Arms, Ellison called, not loud. 2 MAAs appeared, their presence changing gravity. Ryder handed over the phone without being asked. The admission in that gesture was bigger than the device. Ellison shifted half a degree, bringing just the front rows into a softer cone of voice. Lieutenant, for the record, full name and billet. Ava met his eyes. Lieutenant Ava Rios, Naval Special Warfare. A heartbeat of silence. Not for drama, just enough space for the words to reach the back wall. I'm a Navy SEAL. The mess hall inhaled as one. A micro sound, forks settling on trays, chair legs pausing, 100 eyes widening in the same instant. The petty officer behind the galley line froze with a ladle hovering over mashed potatoes. He didn't speak, he didn't nod. He only stood a fraction straighter, like something old in him had just been saluted. Ryder made a small, involuntary sound. Briggs's mouth parted. Carter looked at the tile as if it might offer a different ending. Holt stared at Ava as though the room had flipped and he was the one being measured. Knox's shoulders lowered by a half-inch, recognition replacing denial. Ellison gave the reveal nothing theatrical, only a short nod that told the truth. It was expected here. For those unfamiliar, he said to the room, Naval Special Warfare professionals do not advertise. They do not posture. When necessary, they act precisely, proportionately, and within the law. He let the principle stand on its own feet. To the MAAs, move them. Yes, sir. The 5 formed a line that didn't look like a line, more like 5 separate weather systems circling the same eye. Carter rose with help. Briggs kept glancing at the floor like it might give back the dignity he'd dropped. Holt tried to wear calm and managed only quiet. Ryder surrendered glass and pixels hollowed out. Knox walked under his own power, no resistance left to spend. As they were led away, Ellison faced the tables again. "Some of you have been carrying this in silence," he said. "That ends now. Protected reporting is exactly that. Protected. You will use your chain or the posted channels. Retaliation is its own violation. If you don't know the duty number, you will by nightfall." He angled his chin toward the galley. To the staff who stayed steady, "Thank you." Small nods answered him. "Lieutenant," Ellison said, returning to Ava, written after action by 1800, "includes 72-hour observation notes." "Drafted, sir," she said. He almost smiled. "Of course." Then, lower for her and the nearest few, textbook application minimum force, stop at compliance, no pursuit after break. "You froze 100 people without raising your voice." "They needed quiet more than noise," Ava said, glancing to the 3 first phasers. Ellison's reply was a single approving beat. He turned to the room one last time. "Final point. We aren't strongest when we're loudest. We're strongest when the smallest person in the room knows we'll stand in front of them if needed, and beside them always." He let it land. No flourish. The mess hall's physics restarted in careful increments. Conversations returned, altered. A chair slid without scraping. A spoon found a bowl softly, like someone tucking in a child. Ava eased her stance, tension leaving by degrees. She checked the 3 recruits, breathing steady now, shoulders less pinched. "Finish your lunch," she told them. "You're safe." They nodded like men who hadn't expected to hear those words today. She stepped toward the exit. At the aisle's edge, a young sailor stood to clear her path without speaking. Respect looks like many things. Today, it looked like that. Behind her, the old petty officer finally set down the ladle as though returning it to a display case. The steam curled around his hands and vanished. He watched her go with a private salute no one saw. Outside the doorway, corridor light flattened the fluorescent glare into something gentler. Ava paused, breathing once, steady, then moved on, already assembling sentences and timestamps in her head, already writing the report that would close one chapter and open the next. Commander Ellison didn't shout. He never had to. His voice carried like the low roll of distant thunder, steady, absolute. "This uniform," he began, eyes sweeping the room, "stands for protection, not predation." Every conversation, every clatter of cutlery died. The silence that followed had weight. He continued, "What happened here today will not repeat itself. The reports, the complaints, the whispers, we heard them. But hearing isn't enough. The culture changes now. The 5 recruits who'd been removed would be handled elsewhere, but their absence was louder than any punishment." Ellison's gaze shifted to the 3 first-phase recruits still seated near the center. Their hands trembled faintly over half-eaten food. "You 3, he said, voice softening. "You finish your lunch at the front table. No one will interrupt you again." As they rose, unsure, a ripple went through the room. Older sailors, men and women with years of salt in their blood, stood automatically, stepping aside to clear a path. No one told them to. Respect didn't need orders. The 3 recruits moved slowly forward, eyes down, until they reached the front table. The galley petty officer, 20 years in and quiet as stone, set down his ladle and came to attention. He didn't speak. He simply lifted his right hand, slow and deliberate, in a silent salute to Lieutenant Ava Rios. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then another sailor followed. Then another. Within seconds, the entire line of cooks and staff stood still, hands raised or pressed to hearts in acknowledgement. No applause. No words. Just stillness. Ava didn't move, didn't smile. Her eyes stayed calm, posture steady. Respect didn't require response. Behind her, the sound returned, not loud, but rhythmic, boots aligning, chairs shifting, breaths drawn together. It wasn't chaos anymore, it was order. Ellison turned once more to the crowd. "This place," he said quietly, "will remember this moment. From now on, toughness means looking out for the ones who can't stand yet. If you wear this uniform, you carry that duty. Not one of you is exempt." He paused, scanning the faces. We don't shame the weak. We raise them. We don't corner the vulnerable. We protect them. That's what the flag on your shoulder means." His words sank like stones in water, quiet, rippling outward. In the far corner, Knox sat rigid, eyes wide. He'd seen every second of it, the speed, the precision, the restraint. He finally whispered to no one in particular, "We picked the wrong target." The sentence wasn't bitter. It was reverent, half apology, half awe. Ellison nodded toward Ava once, formal but full of meaning. Lieutenant Rios acted with discipline and restraint. That's what right looks like. Ava gave a simple acknowledgement, nothing more. The salute faded, the room exhaled, and the heartbeat of boots and trays resumed like life restarting after a storm. And for the first time all week, the mess hall of Graywater Base felt like a place of honor again. Weeks passed, and the echoes of that afternoon never truly faded from Naval Training Center Graywater. The official report went through the chain of command, and the investigation confirmed everything Lieutenant Ava Rios had described, word for word. Complaints that once disappeared into locked drawers were reopened, validated, and acted upon. 2 staff members who had ignored the warning signs were quietly reassigned. The peer discipline experiments, those unspoken rituals of humiliation, were shut down for good. A new system appeared on every barracks wall, a clear, anonymous reporting line that bypassed hesitation and fear. Recruits began to use it, not out of defiance, but out of trust. The change came quietly, without slogans or ceremony. Within a month, the numbers shifted. Washouts fell. Graduation rates crept upward. The drill instructors noticed the difference first. Fewer eyes darted down in shame during formation. The air felt cleaner. Even the laughter in the mess hall carried a different tone, stripped of mockery. The 5 who'd started it all were gone, processing disciplinary action elsewhere. Their absence left space that others filled with steadier examples. Knox, the only one who'd seen the truth before it fully unfolded, worked harder than anyone to rebuild what he'd helped break. Ava never mentioned him in her reports. She didn't need to. Redemption didn't live on paper. One afternoon, as the sun angled low across the parade field, Ava stood by the flagpole near the drill block. She wasn't inspecting, not officially, she just watched. The recruits moved in rhythm boots, hitting pavement with precision, the cadence echoing off hangar walls. Among them marched one she recognized, Reed, the quiet recruit who'd been cornered that day. He spotted her as they passed, no words. Just a nod, small but steady. She returned it with the same restraint, a nod between soldiers who understood something beyond rank. Behind them, the flag caught wind, snapping once in the late daylight. The base carried on. Planes roared over the bay, orders barked across courtyards, and life resumed its military rhythm. But something fundamental had shifted. Respect no longer had to shout to be heard. Ava turned toward the breeze, eyes tracing the horizon where sea met sky. She'd served in combat zones, led missions most would never know about. But this, she thought, this small victory of dignity over ego might matter just as much. Her reflection, quiet, measured, final, came like a narrator closing a film reel. Strength is not how loudly you dominate a room. It's how quietly you protect it. The flag rippled once more, catching sunlight on its edge, and the sound blended with the march of new recruits, stronger, steadier, carrying forward a lesson they would not forget. Some of the most important battles aren't fought overseas. They happen right here, inside our bases, our classrooms, and our mess halls. They're the quiet moments when someone decides that courage isn't about rank or size, it's about standing up when no one else will. Lieutenant Ava Rios didn't just stop 5 recruits, she reminded an entire base what the uniform stands for: protection, respect, and honor. Because real strength isn't measured in noise or medals. It's found in restraint, in calm, and in the courage to defend what's right, even when no one's watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more military and veteran stories. These stories keep the courage alive, for those who served, for those who still serve, and for the generations who will carry that legacy forward.